Hey everyone, welcome back to the District 3 podcast. My name is Irvin. I'm doing this podcast by myself today. My co-hosts Migs and Elena are not here, but I think I'll be all right because I'm with good company here. Joining me today, I have a second-time guest of the podcast, Shahid Sheikh. He is the owner of Little Martians Learning Center throughout Northwest Arkansas. And joining him today, we have Jenny Castillo, the owner of Casa Castillo, which is a Spanish immersion preschool and child center. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
We're excited to be here. Thank you.
Shahid, you've been here before, so we don't really have to tell people too much about you. People can just go back to the other episode and learn your life story. But I'm glad you're here.
Man, it's an honor. It's an honor. I'm very happy to be here. I wasn't sure when we'd have another chance to talk like this.
Right.
I wish it was under better circumstances,
For real.
under a better topic. But there's not a more important topic than childcare right now.
Definitely.
But it's an honor to be here with you.
Of course, Shahid is difficult to reach. He's always busy. He has a tougher schedule than the president, I think, because I've texted him several times like, Shahid, we need to meet, and then he's like, I'm actually in Pakistan right now, or I'm actually in Georgia right now. I'm like, so I'm glad it's a miracle to have him in front of me.
Put me
right
on
now.
blast like that. Oh
we
man,
have to call in. But I want to learn a little bit about y'all's childcare centers, because I think last time that you were on the podcast, Shahid, we didn't really talk about that much. So I do want to learn a little bit more about Little Martians and Casa Castillo. If y'all want to talk about like where you all have these centers at, and what specifically do you do at those centers?
Yeah, so I guess since I'm holding the mic, I'll go ahead and start. Otherwise, I'd say ladies first. Jenny probably has a much more entertaining voice than I do. So, So for Little Martians Learning Center, we're blessed to be able to serve our locations in Bentonville, Rogers, Centerton, and Springdale. And, we provide care for children as young as, 6 days old to all the way to 5 years of age. So we cover all the most important early age development topics, and we provide a learning environment for the kiddos, a safe environment, a clean environment where they're really able to be set up for success going into kindergarten. And I'm very blessed to have an amazing team. We have a little bit over 80 teachers and directors and administrators that help us manage across Northwest Arkansas, and try to do the best that we can to serve the families that need us here in Northwest Arkansas. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. What about you, Jenny? Can you tell us a little bit about Casa Castillo? Because I've driven by it several times throughout the Northwest Arkansas, different parts of it. And I've seen the Casa Castillo logo, and I've never learned too much about it. So I'm excited that you're here to share a little bit about what you all do and what your identity is as a center.
Great. Well, it's an honor to be here. Casa Castillo was born out of a place from a mother's heart almost 11 years ago. When my second child was born, she had some medical issues, and she was just so little and needed so much from me that I was feeling just so hurt to have to go back to work and to leave her somewhere. At that time, my oldest son was 2 years old, and he was really hitting that language explosion, and he was speaking more and more. But much to my great dismay, he was speaking English because I was a Spanish teacher for a good part of my career, and my husband is from Mexico. And so our home language and a big focus in our family is to maintain the language and the cultural roots of our family, and to make sure that that speaking Spanish was core to them. I think when you're a teacher, and especially when you're a young teacher before you have your own children, you think you know everything. And so when I was in that place, I would translate so much for lots of different families that where the parents couldn't speak English well enough to really feel comfortable having a conversation about the education of their children. And so I would happily jump in and help translate for them. But then I would meet their kids and realize that those kids were not able to speak Spanish at a very high level, and they certainly couldn't read or write it because their education was in English. And so that really just spurred a new obsession for me of how children are learning language, and why there was this big disconnect in our community and what I was seeing in the public schools, because I was teaching public school Spanish at that time. Anyway, that was the big spur, but then just the mama heart of wanting to have my kids with me, of not feeling like I was connected to their caregivers very much. My kids were at a great center. We were there just part-time, and then part-time they were staying with my mom. And I just didn't feel okay about it. I think every parent has had that feeling when they go into a center and they have to leave their brand new baby with somebody else, is just who
can you trust, right?
Right, exactly.
You don't know them.
They're the most, exactly. I don't know your name, or, and I was at a place and I would see different faces each day. I would feel like the mom that was driving those teachers crazy, and be like, okay, thanks, you can leave now. Thanks for being, and I just didn't feel that connection. And so I told my husband, I said, we've got to find something better. Like we've got to look around. And so, not that they were bad, right? Because my son loved it. He was having a great time, and they were great people, but it's just hard. Childcare is a very hard industry, and finding that perfect fit for your children, that they're getting everything that they need in a high quality setting that, could be equal or better to what you could offer them at home. That's what I wanted for my kids. I'm also a musician. I'm a Suzuki violin teacher. And so when we opened our centers, I was teaching orchestra with the Bentonville school system. And so that's also another aspect that's really important to me, is just having music immersion, having the Spanish language immersion, and getting the kids to have the very best, most high quality experience. And we toured every place in town. My husband said, you're going to have to choose something. And we just didn't find exactly the right fit. There's lots of great programs, and 11 years ago, there were still some great programs, but there wasn't just exactly the right thing for what I wanted for my kids. So we created it. 11 years ago, we opened our first 2-room schoolhouse, and we had a little rental, and we had 1 class of infants and toddlers and 1 class of preschool. And I got up in the morning. I had to move to part-time. I tried to quit from the school district, but they wouldn't let me leave. They convinced me to stay and just teach 2 junior high classes. And so I accepted, because we had to make ends meet. But anyway, I would get up in the morning and teach preschool. We had 3 employees, and we served 25 kids for about that first 2.5 years. Now we have 5 centers across Northwest Arkansas. We have a center, our newest center is in Springdale. We have 2 centers in Centerton. We're getting ready we're actually under construction to build our new campus in Centerton. And then we also have 2 campuses in Bentonville. So we're up to 480 students that we serve in Northwest Arkansas, and we have 144 staff members. And among those staff members that we serve, since we are Spanish immersion, there are 15 different countries represented in my staff. I know that the immigration and helping folks feel welcome and feel at home in Northwest Arkansas has been a big topic for this show, and getting to talk. And that's a big piece of my heart also. So much of the kids come first, right? Those children are most important. But in order for them to get what they need to have teachers who are set up for success. And so my focus, as my company has grown, has moved from teaching children directly, because there's a lot of them, and it's gone to teaching those teachers and helping those teachers have everything that they need so that they can give it back to the kids.
So how do y'all juggle having multiple centers? Because I hear from people sometimes, that start their own daycare, and it's hectic.
It is.
It's like hectic. They're just at one center.
Absolutely.
How do y'all find that balance, or how do you hire the right people to help you manage?
Oh, you just said it. That's it right there. You have to hire the right people. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's been my experience, is that when you have the right people, and I've always had great success of just growing them from within. I love to grow people and have them be able to accomplish their own dreams, Earlier, I was just talking to another center director, and we were talking about the flexibility of being able to go to our kids' activities during the day, or being able to be a parent, because everybody wants to be able to juggle that life, that parenting, that work-life balance, and being able to get the right balance there. And so I want that for me, but I also want it for all of my staff and for the parents that we serve in our community. And so by empowering our staff, taking care of them, paying them a livable wage, offering them benefits and those kinds of things. When we were a mom and pop 3-employee tiny center, we couldn't do that. There was no way that we had that kind of resources to be able to support our staff. But as we've grown and been able to grow the leadership team that we have, and get support from my business partners also, we've been able to offer that back to our staff and make it a great environment, not just for our children, but for those staff members also.
Do people come specifically to you, Jenny, to your center? If, like, for example, a family of like Anglo-Saxons or a black family that specifically wants their kid to learn Spanish.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do they bring them here because of that?
Definitely. Yeah, okay. Most of our clients, I guess, if you will, the families that attend our centers are from monolingual English-speaking homes. I would say about 50% of them are, because they see the benefit of bilingualism, of learning multiple languages, and just having that wonderful Latina spirit of their teachers taking care of their kids, and they absolutely come here looking for that. Then we've got another probably 30% of our students that have Spanish somewhere in their home, that they, maybe they're a second or third generation Hispanic family. Maybe and they want that. They still want them to have that Spanish language in their home. They want to keep those roots. And then we probably have another 20% of my families that we serve that have a third language at home. We have a Vietnamese family. We have a Russian family. We have a Brazilian family. So there's lots of different multicultural aspects that come in there. I know Shahid has a lot of multiculturalism within his centers as well, but it's, Northwest Arkansas especially is just growing so much, and there's so much diversity here in our area that's been a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah, I would second that, and I think that's a blessing of being in Northwest Arkansas, is that it is such a melting pot, and we have the privilege to be able to provide services across the board, and even our own dynamic. A little bit over 50% of our kiddos are bilingual, and in Bentonville specifically, many of them are actually speaking 3 languages and in their home. And so that expectation is, I think when you're coming to an educational center, child care center in Bentonville or Northwest Arkansas in general, there is that expectation that we're going to meet the needs of the broader audience and not just maybe focus on one. But to go back to your question about being able to manage multiple locations and that, I would agree with Jenny in that there's no way we would be able to, or at least I would be able to, without my team. I am very blessed to be surrounded by some incredible directors. Majority of our team, our leadership team, all started in childcare at the entry-level positions. I like to tell folks that some of the most incredible women leaders that I've had the privilege to work with are my directors. And they started working in the kitchen. They had people that doubted their abilities. Some of them didn't know how to use Office and Excel when they came. And each one of them had this level of confidence about them that I'm going to do it. I just need some opportunity. I just need someone to believe in me. I just need someone to invest in me. And I think to be successful as a multi-center operator, that's where you have to focus on, is invest in the people. So you have to identify the right folks, and you have to invest in them, and then you have to provide them the resources they need and trust that they're going to do the best job that they can. As you're aware, with all the things on my plate, there's no way I would be able to do this alone. Gosh, I don't even know half the time where my right hand is versus my left hand, right? And so our people are who we rely on, and we have some amazing people. And I would speak, and I would say even Jenny's team, even though we're competitors in some of our towns directly. My center in Springdale is about 5 minutes from this location here in Jenny's, and I've heard amazing things about your centers, and so I think that speaks volumes to the educators in this area and the teachers that we have and the environment that we have. So it's a huge blessing.
Yeah. I also just want to bring up just the amazing support that we have within the early childhood community. The adversity that we're going through right now has really brought a lot of us together because there's enough kids to go around. We're competitors, sure. We both of us happen to be for-profit businesses. We're hoping to be able to support our children through college and have some semblance of a retirement someday. But we're not in this for the big dollars. Obviously we're here for the children. We're here because we support them, but we're also business people, and we do know what the numbers mean. And I think that is something that our state and the legislators have lost some of their confidence in what the decisions were made with the Department of Education. And just when this decision came down just a couple weeks ago, it just was like a big, heavy net that they just threw on us. And earlier this morning, I was chatting with another director, and she was like, I don't even know what the full impact is going to be. Like, everyone's just kind of waiting for it to actually hit their bank accounts, And so until that actually happens, it's not going to be. Anyway, we're going to get into more of those hairy details here in a second.
Well,
but
we can get into them now. For those that don't know, what has been happening with the childcare community in the past few weeks? Sure. Y'all received some sort of notice that kind of flipped y'all's world upside down. Can you talk a little bit about what that is for those that have no idea, haven't heard about what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
So remember September 19th.
September 19th, our world came crashing down.
September 19th.
Yes. So in childcare industry, we have there's what is considered private pay families who are able to fully cover the cost of childcare. It is, sometimes people say, well, what's the cost? Well, it's just going to cost you your left arm and maybe your right foot to be able to pay for childcare, because it is expensive, and when you think about what are we asking of our staff members to do, is to care for the most vulnerable children in our state and in our families, in our world. And there's a high cost to it. It's not going to my pocket. It's not going to his. Like, we're giving it back to our staff, because we've seen the increase in, food prices alone, and, everything across the board is just growing so much. And so there's a high cost. There are many families in our communities in Arkansas who are unable to afford that. And so the state, in supporting those families that have the greatest needs, that have low income, they need a place for their children, right? If they're going to stay in the workforce, if they're going to be able to keep food on the table and pay for the roof over their head, they've got to have a safe place for their children to go during the day. And so our state has invested in childcare. And the Child Care Development Fund, or CCDF, pays for a portion of their child care cost.
Also known as vouchers. So a lot of people, when they hear that, it's vouchers is what commonly known as.
Yeah, exactly. And so those child care vouchers go to reimburse the provider in order to cover some of our cost. In my case, we still take a bit of a cut from our true cost in order to accept those voucher families into our program.
Yeah. So if you think about it, and so to kind of highlight September 19 that we talked about, there was a decision that was made by the Department of Education. They called a last minute meeting, all providers, all hands on deck. We have an important announcement to make. And the announcement that they shared was essentially that on October 1, provider reimbursements are going to be reduced by 40%. A 40% revenue for most childcare provider is a death sentence. Like if you understand, I think sometimes often people don't really truly understand the cost to operate a business in this state, in this country. Between paying your rent, between having all the insurances that you have to have and carry to operate, between all the payroll taxes and other taxes that you have to pay, the fees, the licensing, the training, the payroll itself, supplies, the food, the list just goes on and on. And so when you look at the true cost of operating a center or an in-home, it's high. It's high. And so most of us are already essentially working for break-even point. In my case specifically, we're subsidizing childcare with other revenue streams because it's just not a model that can be profitable when the state wants to come in and reduce reimbursement by 40%. And they only give you a week and a half to prepare for that. So we have contracts in place, agreements with vendors, our staff. This kind of goes back a little bit, part of Better Beginnings. Better Beginnings is basically a quality standard that the state implemented a while back. And so depending on your levels, your reimbursement rate changes. And the higher the levels go, the reimbursement rate increases. The state essentially asked providers to invest a lot of money into increasing the level of quality and services that we provide. And part of that commitment that providers like Jenny and myself made was increasing wages for our staff. We went from having an average teacher earning $11 an hour to over $16 an hour in Northwest Arkansas. Other parts of the state, it varies, but I know for our space here, when we're paying $16+ an hour for a full-time teacher, that's a pretty high cost to absorb. By the time you take into payroll taxes into account, you're talking about anywhere from $20 to $20 an hour in actual expense that's incurred. So we made investments, and the state, rewarded that with a higher reimbursement rate for a period of time. Now they're coming back on September 19 and saying, okay, we got to go back. We got to go back to before that, 3 years in the pre-COVID, and we're going to give you reimbursements for that. So for most providers who've invested money, they're expecting a return on investment. We can't go back to our teachers and say, hey, the state is going back to pre-COVID rate, so we're going to have to take your pay from $16 an hour back down to what it was pre-COVID. We can't do that. That's not fair. That's not right to them.
They're going to go next door to Chick-fil-A and make more money. And our kids are taking care of your kids. These teachers are taking care of our most important things that we have, our most important babies. I think that, going a little bit more about that quality rating thing, so that, yes, we needed to increase our training level. There was a lot of talk in the state last week about the level of education of our staff members, because, and that quality rating is coming a lot. We get a lot of support from the universities, from the early childhood program, which comes from the same funding. The same funding source goes to providing those trainers to be able to come into our centers and provide programs and to elevate the level of what our staff knows, what they're able to do. And also the ratio expectation, I think, is important. So minimum licensing in the state of Arkansas, for example, requires one staff member for every 5 infants. Well, if you've ever tried to take care of 5 crying babies at the same time, it's not a good idea to have just one person in that room. So Better Beginnings came in and said, guys, do better. Get a higher level, and you will get more funding, and you'll be able to put 2 teachers in that room. At Casa Castillo, we almost always beat ratio. Well, not almost. We beat ratio every single time. But this kind of funding cuts is going to hurt everyone. There's been layoffs already around the state where we're saying, okay, like I've hiring freeze across my centers right now. make do, put a supervisor in the room, go help them out when it's the busy time, but you're going to have to go down to the minimum ratio.
If you think about the impact from that decision, so just to kind of go back to a little bit after that announcement came, we've many of the providers across the state kind of got together and collaborated and pushed an effort to get down to Little Rock and have a conversation on, in trying to help them understand the reality and the impact, because the impact of these cuts is that the most vulnerable families are already being forced to choose between making rent, buying groceries, or keeping their job or paying for childcare. This is an impact that has already happened based on the policies that were implemented by Secretary Oliva and the Department of Education under the leadership of our governor and our legislatures, right? When families are forced to choose between a roof over their head, a food on their table, having a job, or childcare, that's not a good position for society to be in. Studies have shown that every dollar that gets invested in early childhood returns $9. So investing in our children, in these children, has a 900% return on investment, right? Like if somebody comes to you, Jenny, and says, hey, I've got a business proposition and you got a 900% return, what's the answer? Let's do it, right? So why are our legislators and leaders in the state of Arkansas not investing? This is number one. The other aspect is that we have, in many of our peers that we're having conversations with right now, single owners and providers are facing business closures right now. 40% revenue hit is not something that majority small business owners are prepared to deal with. Yeah. It's not one of those things where, well, just toughen up, Buttercup. No. 40% cut is not realistic, right? We don't have bailouts like the big banks and like these big industries and corporations, right? These are people that have a passion and they love children, and they often go without their own amenities just so they can buy extra classroom supplies for their kids. And they're facing closure right now. Or just diapers, yeah. Employers are already planning for a reduced workforce. So employers, companies like Walmart, Tyson, J.B. Hunt, Sam's Club, many employers in this, in Northwest Arkansas specifically, because we're here, I'll speak to them, but I know we're hearing the same feedback across the state, from south, from central, from south, that they are planning for employees to start quitting. So a reduce in workforce is imminent. So
like, what does it look like for you all? Because I know you all have already put thought into this. Like, what happens if the government doesn't do anything?
Yeah, so immediately we've already received word from our peers that they've laid teachers off. So full-time and part-time teachers have already been laid off. Parents and families have already made, in some cases, the tough decision to say, hey, the cost of these cuts is going to put us in a situation where going to work doesn't make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and quit my job and just stay at home, because by going to work and paying for childcare, it's actually costing more now because of these cuts. Mm-hmm. And so now families who were living right, doing the right thing, pursuit of the American dream, just barely their head above water, they're making forward momentum in life, they're just getting dragged to the bottom at this point. And they are having to make that decision to quit their job.
I might have missed this. Maybe y'all haven't talked about it yet, or maybe I missed it. These vouchers that people get, is it because they're in a certain economic level, like they make a certain amount of money or less?
Yes, it is. So the state also looked at the way that they allocated these funds. By the way, is they looked at the state median income. So what are the majority of, what's that average of what the income level is in the state of Arkansas? And they said, okay, if you're lower than 40% of the state median income, you qualify not to have a copay at all for infants, toddlers, preschool. They still are going to charge something for school age. So even if you're lower than the 40% mark, you're still going to have to pay for your school age children after school care, which is turning those kids into latchkey kids. They're going to be sent home alone. They're going to be taking care of themselves, as young as kindergarten. And, the older kids, one family said, yeah, we're going to have to pull our kids out of their after school programs. They're going to have to drop their extracurriculars so that they can take care of the little kids. And
one of our peers that we were speaking to this morning, Jenny, she shared that she's anticipating right now up to 60% of her children that are in the after-school program dropping out. That's 60% of her kids that are going to be going home to an empty home on their own, and they're going to have to stay at home for several hours by themselves because mom and dad are both working. And so safety is a big concern. This is a huge concern.
They have, the focus is so much on education. If you think about what the LEARNS Act was advocating for when our governor put that into place, Arkansas's academic levels are really low, really, really low. And so there's really been a big push in the Department of Education for higher academic levels. Well, if these kiddos have homework or any sort of enrichment that they've got that they need to have after school, they're not going to have that support anymore. They're going to be, knocked back down. Plus, let's talk a little bit about just kindergarten readiness, right? So that's the name of this program is the School Readiness Assistance Program, because they want,
It's an irony.
It really is. They want the children to be prepared to be able to interact in a school environment so that they can actually meet academic goals. But if these kids are not able to go into a high quality childcare or preschool program that's going to help them, I talked to a elementary principal last night and I was like, well, are you ready to potty train some kindergartners? Because they're not even going to get support in those areas because, they're going to be stuck at home with just a babysitter. I've had some talk about elderly grandparents are going to be watching them, but mom's going to have to come home on her break to change diapers because, the grandpa can't even hold the baby so strong. It's so big. It's a big deal,
What are y'all hearing from them, from the people that can make these decisions and help, these childcare centers? Have they made any statement? Have they told y'all anything? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'll let Shahid take this one.
Yeah. So, I think our political leaders do a really good job in front of a camera and on the mic and in person when they're speaking to you, but we're not seeing action. Let's get down to and just be honest. Everybody says the right things when they're in front of the camera, when they know it's on, but the action is not there. We've heard from many state representatives here in Northwest Arkansas, down in Little Rock, some of our legislators that are like, no, childcare is important. Like, this is a 900% return. We need to invest in our future. Like, this affects across all industries, across all space. It's a disaster economically. They recognize that, they say that, but yet we are not seeing action.
Why do you think that is? Because, childcare affects them too. So I wonder why they aren't moving forward anything to support.
I honestly don't know. The big push that we're making, and we hope every person who's listening to us can help us do this. We are asking, as childcare providers, as concerned small business owners, as parents, as friends, family members, we are asking for our legislators to provide an opportunity for a special session. We need the governor to call for a special session and for our legislators to get serious in solving this crisis. And it's a self-inflicted crisis. The Department of Education did not have to execute these program changes and these deep cuts the way that they did. This needs to be resolved. So we're asking every member, every Arkansan to make phone calls, to send emails, speak to representatives, call the governor's office and ask for a special session, because on November 1, all of the cuts in full go into effect. You will see a disastrous impact, not just in childcare, not just with the most vulnerable families, not just with the employers near that center, but across our economy, you will see disaster strike. This is not a false alarm. This is not a crying wolf. This is the fact and the reality we're facing. We need a special session. We need legislators to back their talk with action. Why they haven't done it to date, we don't know.
You know, when I went down there and got to sit in that legislative session with the education committee, I was impressed. I was impressed with their talk, with what they were saying, because they are some very educated, very capable people. That's why we want them in office, because we need them to fight for us, to vouch for us. Some of them were very upset because they had not heard about what was going on. This was a Department of Education decision that came down. They say the governor knew about it. She signed off on it. But it wasn't something that went to the committee to make a decision about these cuts. The word is that the funding ran out and that there's nothing they could do about it. Well, let me tell you, they should have done something about it. They should have seen this coming, because 7 business days notice for this to roll out, that's less than a pay period for these families. And it's absolutely going to be devastating for them.
And when you say there's nothing we could have done about it, and if you look at the financial situation for the state of Arkansas, we had a $750 million surplus in 2024. We're looking at right now and on track for a $800 million plus surplus for this fiscal year. We have $2 billion in a rainy day fund. There's all this money that's there that's paid by taxpayers. We are paying that money. And the only thing we're asking for them to do is put that money and get a return of 900%. This is not a handout. We're not asking for a handout. This is not a program that's going to just go to waste and never be accounted for. This is an investment with taxpayer dollars. When you're sitting on $2 billion in rainy day fund and you have $800 million coming up for a surplus and a $750 million surplus for the year past, there is no reason to not invest in our children and our future. 900% return. Anybody should know the answer to that.
I feel like our state was on the right track, right? There had been so many changes just in the last year where the state was coming forward, asking for those higher, better beginnings levels, asking for us to invest. You know, it used to be just a 3-star program, Better Beginnings. Well, now it goes up to 6 levels. They asked us to level up. They asked us to do more. And man, we worked for it. We worked so hard for it. All of our staff members did, everybody here, to make the adjustments that we needed to raise the level of the quality. It means more people in the classroom. It means higher quality materials. We had a big push, especially at Casa Castillo, to get all the plastic out. Like, let's put some more high quality materials in. Let's try to get some more. Let's go Reggio. Let's go Montessori. You know, like everybody wants that very best bougie thing for their children. And by investing in our children and raising that level of reimbursement that we were receiving, we were able to do a couple of those things. We were able to reach a little bit more of those goals. And we were going forward, right? So it seems like somewhere along the line, somebody made the wrong decision and they didn't have enough foresight to recognize that, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. So it's like we just barely have some centers that leveled up and we're receiving that higher reimbursement. And then they're like, oops, sorry, psych, no longer, it's not there. But even so, like some of these centers across the state who have been operating, you know, at a level 6, and it's not just a 40% for them. It's going to be way more than that they're going to have to learn how to readjust and operate under that.
And just to be clear, I think you were very optimistic in that the reality is most childcare owners right now today in the state of Arkansas, and I would argue across the nation, are not equipped to handle a 40% revenue reduction overnight. Most will be in a do or die decision making situation. There's just 40% is not something that most people are equipped to. Even having a rainy day fund, we don't have anything like what Sarah, our governor, has with $2 billion, but 40% is a lot. There's no way to absorb that.
It just seems like a big blind spot on their part. Like, how can you hear what how big this problem is, or how big this problem can become, and not be proactive in it? And they're just kind of leaving people to survive.
Nobody's even answering for it. Like, no one's even explained to us, oh, this is what happened. This was, or said, hey, my bad. Nobody's apologizing to anybody about it. They're just saying, nope, this is what we've decided, the end.
Is this kind of like are they trying to like sneak it under the rug? Because there hasn't really been much media coverage besides you all that have been advocating. Like, you all are the ones that have kind of been out there being outspoken, being interviewed and stuff, but I haven't seen like a press release.
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you, September 19th, when this came out, it was a 28-minute webinar. They would not even turn their camera. They call it a meeting. This is a provider meeting. Usually they have cameras on and they have the chat box active, and it's more interactive. Well, on September 19th, they just had kind of an ultimatum. This is what's going down, and turned it off, and we were all like, what just happened?
It's kind of like when someone posts like a controversial thing on social media and they disable the comments so no one can say anything, right?
Yeah. So it was an interesting thing. So when we saw that special session, when we attended that special session in Little Rock, the Department of Education basically said legislators are aware of it. We've communicated to them. They know this is happening.
Sounds like they weren't.
And then we went and spoke with the legislators, and in that session, they called out the Department of Education and said, you didn't tell us. We had no idea. So like the left hand doesn't even know what the right hand is doing, and they're sitting like literally, 100 yards away from each other. Like, how can we say this is responsible stewardship of our government when this is the type of incompetence that's taking place on basic communications? They're pointing blame at each other. That's what's happening.
And y'all's call to action is to contact your representatives to build pressure to eventually have a special session so this can be voted on, because it didn't go through any committee. So whenever you talk to, usually whenever there's like an issue, there's like a committee of representatives that you have to reach out, like these specific 8 to 12 people.
Exactly.
This situation, you contact any representative that you can, because it didn't go through committee. There's not a committee specifically for this. We just need people to build that pressure with the governor.
The governor is the only one that has the power to call the special session, right? So the education subcommittee is the meeting that we actually got to see in Little Rock that met. But even then, like, it's internal in the Department of Education has so much, this is interesting that I don't know that many people recognize, but Tanya Williams was the director of the Office of Early Childhood, and she was for 20 plus years. And she was with the department when it was with the Department of Human Services Division of Early Childhood, right? And so last year that the division merged with the Department of Education.
That was as part of the LEARNS Act that was rushed through.
Yeah. Another fun thing to talk about. And so all of that happened, and so the Department of Education doesn't know what to do with us. The Department of Education, it's not the Division of Human Services, Education now has all of these early childhood people, and they kind of think that we're secondhand citizens, And so instead of saying, hey, if you guys have what you need, you can step up. And so kindergarten can start, first grade, all of those next level education sources can be more prepared to reach higher levels. They're saying, oh, you don't matter. I guess your quality doesn't matter. It's fine if you need to go back to minimum licensing requirements. They actually said that in the meeting. Oh yeah, we understand that you might not be able to maintain the higher ratios, but that's all right. Go back to doing the bare minimum, the basics. And it's just like, it's just like
it was all for nothing.
Exactly.
We spent years upgrading our facilities, increasing wages, hiring, training staff. I mean, training is not cheap. Training is not cheap. And so we did all of that just to have our administrators come back to us and say, hey, just go back to the bare minimum.
How many providers in Arkansas are in your network right now who are pissed off about what's going on? Is this all like how many have y'all been connected with or in your network of people that are wanting to organize to build that pressure?
Yeah. So we have a group that we've created on Facebook. It's called Childcare Champions. And in this group, we have our providers from across the state. And so last count, we had over 1,000 unique providers that are connected and trying to collaborate on a solution right now with this. Wow. You know, we're, interestingly enough, for Call of Action. So one of the things that this group, this organic group that's formed to try to come together and solve this, where our federal government has failed, where our state government has failed, where our legislators have failed to prioritize this. And so we started a countdown that right now we're 23 days away. So the most devastating cuts for providers go into effect at the end of this month. So we're 23 days away from that happening, which means that the scenarios we described earlier, where it affects teachers, where it affects provider closures, where it affects families, where it affects employers and our economy as a whole, that deadline is happening in 23 days. So if we don't get a special session to address this right now, then the impact starts. And if they come back 6 months from now and say, okay, we're ready to talk about this, well, 6 months from now, you might have 1,000 centers that have already shut down and closed. An average of 12 teachers in a center, you're talking about 12,000 unemployed, Arkansans. Like, where are their kids going to go?
Another thing that comes to mind is just the so there's a I guess it's not really a hotline, but there is a technical assistance that the state provides for high behavior, at risk children. Right? That office in the department they're unable to keep up with the demand, with the needs. There are so many children in our centers that are acting out, biting, throwing, violent, aggressive. They're seeing big behaviors in the state of Arkansas, that there's a whole department of support, supposedly, right, that can come into the centers and help those kids. Because this is another thing that one of our requirements as a center that accepts voucher children, voucher students, is that we won't expel them. We can't suspend these kids. But they are many times from the most at-risk families. A lot of them are foster kids or have been through the foster system. They've had parents who have been incarcerated, that, or families who've just been, we've got some domestic abuse moms that are just trying to survive, on their own. Not to mention teen parents. I know there was I've talked to one center who supports a lot of teen parents. So these are kids themselves that are parents that are still in high school, that now are, in order to continue their education and get that high school diploma, they're going to have to start paying for childcare. So how is that center going to support those babies who are raising babies, and those things. So talking about that big behavior piece, if I've had, knock on wood, everybody's got one or two of those kiddos, right, that just needs a lot of extra support. It's not that child's fault that they have a traumatic home life. But if the parents are now going to be dealing with so much more, how are they going to be able to provide the support for those children who are the most vulnerable if they're not able to pay their bills? Yeah. Because they're going to be paying, more. These are the families that need this support. And it's not that they don't want to. Like, when you talk about generational poverty and families that have been in this for so long, yes, we want to give them a lifeline. We want to give them a way out, right? We want to be able to support the next generation and give more. One of the big Better Beginnings requirements is supporting families. We have to go through and make a whole action plan to be able to support families. That's the right thing to do. That is the right thing to do. And by cutting funding to this, it's going to diminish our capacity to support those families. If we keep it the way that it has been going and have the people who have actually put Better Beginnings system into motion, they know what they're doing. But the state is cutting the funding, is taking our legs out from under us. You know, the educators that are working to support center providers, home families providers, and to give the support to those families who are in crisis, they are the ones that need this funding. And by taking that funding away, it makes it impossible to be able to support them. And
and it's not. And I know some of the listeners out there, and I've heard this feedback that hey, it was their decision to have kids. Hey, they should, they should fend for themselves. We can't have handouts and this survival of the fittest. And I'm going that type of thought process and that, like, set that aside for a moment and just think economically. The reality is that unlike other programs that some of these individuals want to call handouts, early childhood education is not a handout. No one is doing a favor for these parents or the providers. What's happening is it's an investment that has a 900% return. I'm going to keep on this because it's very important to articulate to all of our Kansans and the citizens across the country. Childcare is not another handout program. Childcare is an essential component of our economy. During COVID, it was identified by our government that childcare is an essential industry. Without childcare, our economy comes to a halt. It just doesn't work. And so when you have an industry that is essential to national interest, and then that investment has a 900% return, it's no longer a handout. This is common sense financials. It's basic math. Every dollar you invest has a $9 return. We need to do the right thing using math and our brains, but also our heart. Making statements like, it's just another handout program is not.
Like, why are kids being left at child care centers? Because the parent is working, right? Like, why is this a handout? They're literally trying to make ends meet and like bring food to their family's table.
That's right. And there's requirements, for these parents to work. I want to share one story with you guys. I had a call from one of our grandfathers here in this area, and he shared his concerns about this. And I mean, you could tell he was in his voice. It was trembling. It was almost in tears. And he shared that he has a daughter who's struggling in life. She's trying to do the best that she can, working and that. And then he has a beautiful grandchild who's in our center, who's in one of our centers. And he said that, I'm really worried about my grandchild because my wife and I are on fixed income, right? We don't have additional extra funding, and our daughter's doing the best that she can. But I'm really worried at the end of the day for my grandchild because the best meal, the most nutritious meal, the best part of their day is when they're inside of your school, right? This is a grandfather who's on fixed income, who doesn't have the means to go above and beyond to be able to do, and he'd spend his entire Social Security on his grandkids if he could, right? But they're in a tough situation. The mom is working; she's in a tough situation. But that child, so when centers close, that nutritious meal at a minimum that child is getting, that loving, caring, clean, safe environment that they're getting at Casa Castillo or at Little Martians or at one of the thousands of child care providers across the state of Arkansas disappears. What do they do?
And that's just one testimony, right?
That's one testimony.
Imagine like all the other people that are going through.
We have on change.org, we started a petition to collect signatures from across the state. We're well above 5,500 signatures now. And if you go through that petition, and you read some of those comments, people have posted videos of testimonies. They've shared comments and feedback. There's hundreds of these stories, thousands of them across the state. But we need everyone to get involved. Even if you don't have children right now immediately, trust me when I say this affects you. Even if you don't have kids today, this affects you.
So call to action is call your representatives and tell them how this is a concerning, urgent issue that people need, that providers need support in before November 1st.
23 days to go.
The change.org signature, anybody can sign that.
Sign that petition.
And is there anything right now online that people could follow? Like, is there anything where people can keep up with what y'all are doing, or?
Yeah, so we've got a big push on social media. Hopefully, you've even seen it. But if you can search childcare champions pack. That's who we are. So childcare champs, I think, is our handle for our Facebook and our Instagram and TikTok accounts. And so there's lots of. We've been trying to get a presence, right? We want these stories to be told because it is a very individual thing, but it's affecting across the board. And so the impact is on a one-on-one basis, but it's going to hit every single person in Arkansas.
Yeah.
So follow us, get involved, reach out. We would love to have support. If you've got contacts, with our legislators, somebody knows somebody.
Someone knows. Someone knows the governor. Come on.
We've posted on our group and online. We've posted phone numbers. We've posted emails for the legislatures, for the governor's office. We've posted their all of their contact information. So the number one thing that everyone could do, and guys, it's not much. I'll make this very simple, right? You wake up in the morning, you get a cup of coffee. I'm sure most of you, if you're like me, you open up a news feed and you're on your phone while you're drinking your coffee, right? It takes less than 30 seconds to copy and paste a letter and send it to the governor, send it to the legislators. Then put your phone and coffee down and then pick up and dial the phone number. All the phone numbers are saved on there. So you just need to tap it. You dial the phone number and you tell them exactly what's in that letter. Take care of childcare. Take care of our future. Invest in childcare. This is not a handout. They are not asking for a handout. This is an investment, 900% return. So make that phone call. Then go online on Facebook, open up, visit our page, and go to the petition and just share it. Share it. And then when you're at work, at lunch or something, and you're, having a little break and sitting down with your peers, go ahead and spark the topic. Have you heard about childcare? Do you understand that we're headed for a disaster if our governor does not take action and call for a special session? And I promise you, many of them are going to say, yeah, we know it. Yeah. We know it. Have you done something about it? Do something, guys.
And even
we need your help.
That are not affected right now. Like right now, I don't have kids, but in the future I might, right? And then I might need childcare, and who knows how expensive it's going to be then. So definitely things to look out for, not only for the people that are affected now.
That's so important, what you just said right there, because, this is going to affect the bottom line for our private pay families too. So even if you don't qualify for that school readiness assistance program and you're a private pay customer, if you will, we're gonna have to raise prices. This is we're gonna have to come up with that deficit somewhere, and it's gonna end up coming out of everybody's pockets.
One of the models, Irvin, that we did in trying to understand how best to absorb this as a private business, in order to take that 40% cut and to be able to continue to maintain our financial situation, not make money, not lose, just to maintain where we are after the state cuts and takes away 40% of our revenue, on average, prices would have to go up by $100. Wow. $100 a week. $100 a week per child is what they would have to go up in order for this to be to allow us to stay in business.
That's not fair for anybody, right? When the state could step up and keep their promises, maintain their contracts that they've already had put out there, because these families, many of them had already been told, oh yeah, you're covered until June 2026. And they've just got to hold on until their kiddo can get to kindergarten, and so that's, okay, one more thing. I got one more thing before y'all get us off of here. But one of the other changes that they enacted is they're putting a lifetime cap on these families, right? So get this, and this was a sneaky one because no one's really talked about this yet, but they've put a lifetime cap on these families. I think it's like 72 months or something like that. Well, let me just tell you, 72 months is not going to get your child to kindergarten, and that's per parent for family. So that's not like, okay, if you've got 2 or 3 kids coming along, you've got 15 years of childcare that you've got to cover, if they're coming back to back. And so they're saying, well, you can't, if you have triplets, then you can cover it at the same time because it's within the 72 months. But they're saying that that's going to be their cap. So these families who have multiple children, what are we going to do? Put a limit on how many children we can have as Americans? Like, come on.
Yeah, our president wants to give $5,000 per baby to have more babies, right? But yet we're going to not pay for the child care that it takes to help those parents raise those babies.
Oh, wow. I think y'all gave a lot of information for people to be just educated, because I bet you a bunch of people listening right now had no idea this was happening. I only know because I'm friends with Shahid on Facebook, and I see his posts and I see everything. And then Lenza also, who was posting about this on social media. But a lot of people have no idea that this is happening. And I feel like unless people like stumble on this podcast or maybe see a news outlet, they won't know until it's directly affecting them, which is scary, because they're going to get like a rude awakening out of nowhere, right? So make sure you listen to these calls of actions that Jenny and Shahid gave you all today. Make those phone calls, sign the petitions, reach out. If you know someone who knows a state representative, or if you know someone that knows Governor Sanders, reach out to them and tell them that they should be fighting for childcare. Shahid, Jenny, thank you both for joining me today. I appreciate you making the time. I see your passion in your eyes for your kids and for your centers and for your employees. So hopefully there's something that gets resolved within the next few weeks before shit hits the fan, So please, if you're listening to this, take action. This is an urgent issue, and we'll be sharing the links on our social media so that you can sign the petition and so you can call your representatives. Thank you all. And for everybody listening, that was the end of this episode this week. This is Irvin signing off.